I don't care what you have done, where you've been, what your past holds, the mistakes you're making, the mistakes you've made, the bad choices you're still making today. All it takes is one choice to change your entire life and future. And that choice is to follow God and trust Him with what comes next. And I'll be honest, it wasn't an overnight thing. Like, I kind of condensed it to give you the short version. There was a lot of mistakes I made along the second half of the story to today. And I still make mistakes, don't get me wrong. But just give God a chance, y'all. If you are someone who is pissed off at the world because of what has happened to you, you hold anger and resentment, you come from a broken home, you think there's no future for me because look where it started. God doesn't care about where you start, He cares where you finish. And the way you finish is with Him helping write the script of what comes next, if you will. And it may not all make sense right now. Even along the way, things happen that I, could have taken as a setback. But God kept saying, no, just keep going forward. Just keep trusting me. So my life started with a broken home, with abuse, with, just all those things. And then I've had 5 marriages that ended. Okay, I'm single now at 51 years old, but I've been married 5 times. I've had 3 children from 3 different fathers, all out of wedlock. I was addicted to drugs and alcohol. I was sexually promiscuous. I There's some things that just for the sake of this video I've left out, like things that I've done wrong to other people. And all of these things. And once I just said, God, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I want something better. It was all gone. My life changed the day I accepted Jesus and decided to walk with Him. And if I can go from all of those things, getting started, when I was a child, I experienced, like many children do, from a family member. And if you're wondering why I didn't say the word, sometimes the algorithm pings on those words and I don't want to risk that. So as a young child, that's what I dealt with that. And then, coming after that, broken home. I mean, it's kind of standard for a lot of people these days, unfortunately. But at that time, it was new. Divorce was not prevalent like it is now. And so I have 2 younger sisters, but my parents split. I ended up living with my dad, which continued that going on. Eventually, I went to live with my mom. Unfortunately, she drank a lot. She had an alcohol problem and she was loving. She didn't abuse us or anything, but struggling with that and having to help raise my younger sisters. So once I entered into my teen years, I had a lot of anger and resentment. And of course, I rebelled like many teenagers do. And mind you, during all of this time, I was not raised in church. My family did not go to church for like 2 years. In one of my dad's wives, he had many wives, which that's kind of hereditary because I ended up doing that too. Husbands, not wives. But I did go to church. I think it was like 6th and 7th grade, went to like church camp, stuff like that. But it was just like a thing to do to get away from home. I wasn't really understanding the whole following Jesus and all of that. So I don't really count that as going to church. I mean, I learned a few things, but it didn't stick. So moving into my teenage years, like many young girls do who come from broken homes and deal with at an early age, I was just looking for love. And so most of my teenage years was spent drinking, partying, like sexual promiscuity, just looking for someone to give me the attention that I needed. And of course, that did not end well. At 17, I ended up getting pregnant and having a child. Now, a few years later, I did give that child up for adoption to a family member. And that kind of took a whole bad spin. And again, I'll share about that in another video. But teen pregnancy, 17 years old. And now I'm an adult. So I turn 18. I'm still living with my mom and I meet the love of my life. Okay. The only problem was, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was just so fascinating, brought me out of my shell. Like he showed me the attention that I had been striving for my whole life. The problem was he was a massive drug addict and a drug dealer. So I married him, not knowing these things at the time, but eventually it all came out. And so, long story short, it didn't end well. I actually ended up leaving. I joined the military and left the country. Okay. So I was like 21 at this time. But the reason I joined the military is because after meeting him and, placing kind of all my, like, he was my everything, which is a big mistake because later I learned that God is my everything, but I didn't know that at the time. That led me into what, 18, 19, 20 to 21. So 3, 4 years of nothing but partying, drugs, alcohol, waking up on couches. I didn't even know where I was half the time. I mean, it was just, those were some really bad years of my life. And honestly, I can't believe I actually made it through them because we partied so hard. So 21, I joined the military and I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting out of this lifestyle. Well, that just opened up a whole nother mess. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very proud of my military service. I served for 18 years, but during that time, I started kind of searching for another thing to fill me. So before it was finding someone to love me, now it was searching for validation, acceptance. Well, I came in the military when women weren't really liked. Okay. They were putting us on ships and enter us into the men's kind of spaces. And it was very, very difficult. And so I kind of compromised a lot of my values in order to be accepted and to be taken seriously as a woman in some of these fields. And, that took a toll on me. I dealt with a lot of sexual harassment, a lot of finding out that in order for me to get ahead, like men sort of expected certain things. And I'll be honest, there were times that I caved into that because I wanted to be accepted so bad. And I wanted, to be successful and to prove that I was worthy of the jobs that I was doing. And so also during this time, I had a couple of marriages. Military and marriage don't always work together, but it is what it is. And so during my military time, I was married twice. So this would be my 3 marriages because my first drug dealer and then the 2 during my time. I had 2 children, 2 different fathers, one of which I was not married to. Lots of partying because when I would go on deployment, my child would stay on shore duty with the father. Okay. So lots of partying, just numbing everything and still striving to be accepted in this environment. I so wanted validation to prove my worth, that I am worthy of the job. I am worthy of, being advanced to the next level. I just wanted validation because my whole life, my parents divorcing and just all the things, I just never felt worthy. I never felt loved. And so I was searching for these things in the world. And of course, didn't find them. I didn't know this at the time. But so military career ends. A lot of things happened. I actually became addicted to prescription medication at this point. And I had 2 small children at home, and the military just kicked me out. Like they were done with me. It was a medical, so I did get some benefits, but they literally just pushed me out the door. 18 years of service, and they just, we're done with you. And so that was a big blow to my ego, big blow to my self-esteem. And, I was angry. I was so angry and so bitter. And this happy person that people know today would not recognize the person that I was at that time. This was like 2011, 2012. And I just hated the world. I was so angry. It took me about a year to detox off of all the medications that the military had put me on. And at this time, I was jobless. I couldn't find a job. Nobody would hire me. Like 18 years of service, I have a college degree. Not even fast food would call me back. I'm not even kidding. And, I still had a kid, or had two kids, and I had a house, a mortgage, I had bills, and I refused to go back into the welfare system. So I started mowing yards in my neighborhood. I literally mowed every yard in my neighborhood. Started doing some little landscaping jobs for a few neighbors and stuff. And that's how I paid my mortgage until I finally got hired on with what's called the Texas Veterans Commission, which is a veteran organization helping veterans back into the workforce, which was kind of ironic. But so that kind of worked for a while. And now I had purpose again, but I was putting everything into that. So now I was being still filled by this like job. Okay. Like these veterans need me, the job needs me. And I was still left empty. And my medical issues, I have a lot of medical issues, started creeping up again. And eventually I had to let go of that job. So here I was, jobless again. Enter ex-husband number 4, who actually turned out to be a bipolar crack addict. And I didn't know it at the time, but the things he was offering me were the things I was missing, that fulfillment. I was trying to fill these voids my whole life up until this point. So 40 something years of trying to fill a void that ended in destruction. This man wiped out my bank account, got me back on mental health drugs, which I swore I would never do. And I started spiraling again. Still had the children at home. They were growing, but they were still younger, in elementary and middle school, I think, at the time. And finally, one day, this new church opened kind of down the street from my house. And I was like, you know what? Well, actually, I church shopped. I was like, I need to go to church. Like, you just get that feeling when you're at the bottom of the barrel. You're like, maybe I'll go to church. I don't know. I've tried everything else. And so I church shopped for a little while, and it just wasn't happening. I went into these places and just, I felt judged. I felt like odd, out of place, whatever you want to call it. So I went and tried out this new church. It's Church Unlimited. That is now my home church. And in the message that I was hearing that day, it just, my life, like a light bulb went off. And I felt for the first time God speaking to me. And I didn't ever understand when people said that before. I was like, what do you mean God speaking to you? Like, I don't even know what that means. In that moment, I realized what that meant, because I've heard him saying, just come to me and I am going to make you better. I'm going to make everything better. And so from that day forward, I just kept going, and I ended up starting to serve, and I joined a life group, found some other women, which, funny story, when I came out of the military, I could not be around other women because I didn't know how to be a normal woman. My whole life, well, for the last 20 years was in the military. And so that military transition out was difficult anyway, because, just the wounds of war and all that stuff. But I didn't know how to be a woman, like a woman in normal terms. Like when I would be around these women, I really just wanted to, because the things they talked about, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. And so I didn't know how to interact with society, honestly, which is funny now because people are like, really? Because you never shut up now. But in those times, I was, social anxiety for me was a big thing. I was diagnosed with PTSD, major depressive disorder, general anxiety disorder, and a few other acronyms from the alphabet. And I just didn't know how to be human, really. But after a few sermons at this church, each time I would go, my mind would open a little more and a little more. And I started serving. I would use the get connected, like people come to church and ask questions, like how do I do whatever. And I had this list, and it was funny. They wanted me to do the door greeter. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't make small talk with people, but I know how to tell people what to do. And if you give me a cheat sheet, I can totally give directions. So I started serving there. I joined a life group with these other women. And for the first time, I didn't feel weird anymore. Like these women were so welcoming and loving on me and didn't judge me. Within a few months, I was actually kind of running the whole front, greeter, everything. Like I could greet, I could do doors, I could do whatever. Because I started kind of opening up a little each time. And God is like, no, I got you. No, I got you. So then I joined another life group. Now, at this point, I don't have a job. still, because I had left the Texas Veterans Commission because of my medical issues. So I was still doing the yard mowing and just little side jobs and things like that. And I joined this life group, and it was for writers. And I had been learning all of this technology stuff like blogging and, how to create a website, stuff like that. I just been learning it because I didn't have anything else to do with my time other than be home. And when it would get too hot in the summer, I could only mow yards in the morning or in the late evening. So during the day, it's like, okay, let's get on the computer. Well, the people in this life group suggested to me that I start sort of a coaching program to help Christian writers learn how to do the tech stuff to take their writing to the online space. And at first I was like, whatever, shut your face. Okay. Like, I barely just became a Christian. I barely know a few Bible verses. You want me to lead other Christians who are really like, in my mind, thinking these are like really good Christians because they've been Christians for a while and they know what they're doing. Of course, none of us know what we're doing. I know this now, but as a new Christian, these are things I was thinking. So long story short, in December of 2018, I started what is now my ministry. And in the 5 years since we've started, I have been blessed with this opportunity to I have 3 websites. Okay. I have a teaching platform, a YouTube channel. Actually, I have 2 YouTube channels now, and digital products and just all these things. And I am able to minister and connect with women all over the planet, y'all. And if you had told me 10 years ago, coming out of the military, well, it's been 14 years, but when I got out of the military, as broken as I was, addicted to drugs, no job, having my 4th husband and all these children out of wedlock, and just all the things that I had incurred and experienced over my life. If you had told me that day that 10 years from now, you are going to be leading a ministry online, helping spread God's message across the world in the online space, honestly, I would have been shut your face, like whatever. And here I am talking to you on this video today, sharing this journey with you. And so, all that to say, I know I'm kind of keeping this going a little while. I try to condense it as much as possible. I don't care what you have done, where you've been, what your past holds, the mistakes you're making, the mistakes you've made, the bad choices you're still making today. All it takes is one choice to change your entire life and future. And that choice is to follow God and trust Him with what comes next. And I'll be honest, it wasn't an overnight thing. Like, I kind of condensed it to give you the short version. There was a lot of mistakes I made along the second half of the story to today. And I still make mistakes, don't get me wrong. But just give God a chance, y'all. If you are someone who is pissed off at the world because of what has happened to you, you hold anger and resentment, you come from a broken home, you think there's no future for me because look where it started. God doesn't care about where you start, He cares where you finish. And the way you finish is with Him helping write the script of what comes next, if you will. And it may not all make sense right now. Even along the way, things happen that I, could have taken as a setback. But God kept saying, no, just keep going forward. Just keep trusting me. So my life started with a broken home, with abuse, with, just all those things. And then I've had 5 marriages that ended. Okay, I'm single now at 51 years old, but I've been married 5 times. I've had 3 children from 3 different fathers, all out of wedlock. I was addicted to drugs and alcohol. I was sexually promiscuous. There's some things that just for the sake of this video, I've left out, like things that I've done wrong to other people. And all of these things. And once I just said, God, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I want something better, it was all gone. My life changed the day I accepted Jesus and decided to walk with Him. And if I can go from all of those things, broken, beaten down, no hope. Oh, one thing I did forget, I had a unalive attempt earlier in my military career, actually. Um, Obviously it didn't end well, or it ended well. Like, I'm still here. But if you've ever been at the bottom of that barrel, thinking there's no hope, it's because you were looking for that hope in the things of this world. You were trying to fill that void, whatever that void is. That void can be anything. I had a lot of voids, unfortunately, because of my, younger years, how my family and just the different things. But I was always chasing worldly things to fill that void. And the moment I decided to fill that void with God, everything changed. And it can change for you too, if you will just take that first step and accept Him and invite Him into your heart and start making. It's never going to be perfect, but every day you strive a little harder to follow Him, to listen to Him, to listen for Him, and lean into where He is guiding you, not where you think you need to be. Anything is possible once you bring Jesus into your life. So that is my story. I hope it wasn't too long. And I really, truly hope that somebody watching this today can resonate with something. Broken home, the, multiple marriages, children out of wedlock, alcohol abuse, addiction, all of those things. And because of God, I'm still standing. Not only am I still standing, but He is using me to further the mission of His kingdom. That what I do now is online ministry. I mean, this video on my channel here is just one part of it. And so you don't know what God has planned for you until you give Him a try. So that is all. I thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear your feedback, your comments. If anything I said today resonated with you, or if you're in any of those places that I mentioned right now, let me know. Let me pray for you, because God truly wants to make your future the one He has planned for you and not the one that has already been going on. All right.